Good morning, everyone. Today, I'm pleased to introduce Hristina Pendicheva from the Ministry of Finance of Bulgaria. She is a member of the European Commission Member State Expert Group on Sustainable Finance, also a state expert in the Ministry of Finance on the Financial Markets Regulation Directorate. Today, the topic, as we see it clear and green, sustainable finance in the EU. She is going to give us some regulatory updates. We are going to have her present the topic. Then if you, throughout the presentation, you have any questions, there is a Q&A, so you can send us your questions and we can read them as we go or at the end. And also at the end, if you feel comfortable and you want to ask her a question, you can raise your hand and we will give you the possibility to directly have a conversation with her. Thank you very much for coming. People are still joining. I think let's wait, now if you're okay, 2 more minutes.
Yes, sure, Daniela.
So we make sure that everyone is joining. I also remind you that this webinar is being recorded and is going to be published on our website, CEE Perspective. There will be also resources as well as this presentation. So for any of those who want to share it, they can do so, or want to review it. It will be permanently available on our website. Okay, so we have quite a crowd. Thank you all. Hristina, whatever you want, you can start.
Okay. So good morning to everyone. On Friday, it's a bit difficult to focus on regulations, but I hope that today's webinar will be really useful for all of you because the general idea is to make an overview of the very dynamic legislation in sustainable finance, especially last year. There were a lot of amendments, and what I would try to do is really to try to describe the full picture and what is the connection between the different amendments in the different pieces of legislation. And I would like really in the end of today's webinar to focus on the voluntary SME standard, which I think would be really important in our region, the Central and Eastern Europe region, because as we all know, most of the companies in our countries are SMEs. And with a very narrow scope of CSRD, they would fall out of the scope and would not be obliged to publish sustainability reports. So maybe we can start with a quick reminder of of what we currently have as regulatory architecture, so to say, in the sustainable finance area. You know that the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive has been very ambitious and has set very ambitious targets and requirements for the companies that are in the scope and are obliged to report. Of course, there is a very strong link also with the taxonomy regulation, and taxonomy reporting has been included as part of the sustainability report. This information, sustainability information, is of significant importance for the financial market participants and advisors, and Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation, which, as we all know, has been adopted in the first place in 2019. We had some significant challenges with the application of the SFDR because of the lack of data from the investing companies. So everybody was waiting for the CSRD to start applying. And for the first time in financial services legislation history, at least to my knowledge, we have an amendment of the directive before it has been even applied in a lot of the member states. So we have the omnibus, so-called omnibus proposal in February 2025. The main part of the omnibus package is related to the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. And we have also a few other legislative amendments and initiatives in this regard, which I would talk about a little bit later. So first to focus on the CSRD and what has been done. Actually, the main objective of this proposal was simplification. So the Commission was trying to, first of all, to reduce the scope, then to also provide for a voluntary reporting standard, because under CSRD, which currently is still applicable before the publication of the amendments, we don't have a requirement for the European Commission to adopt the voluntary reporting standard. As I already said, we will focus on this a bit later on the work of EFRAG and what the Commission will do. But now let's focus on the CSRD. So now we have a much clearer scope. It doesn't matter if you're a public interest entity, if you're a listed company or not, and in which sector the company is actually active. The scope is clear. We have two cumulative criteria: large undertakings with more than 1,000 employees and a net annual turnover exceeding 450 million euro. As we all can imagine, this is a really very significant rise of the thresholds, because in the non-financial reporting directive previously, we had 500 employees as a threshold. With the CSRD, this has been amended to 250, and now we are going to 1,000 employees plus this significant turnover. So this narrows the scope, and for example, in Bulgaria, we will have maybe around 20 companies that would be still in the scope of the CSRD, obliged to publish a sustainability report. Another key change in the directive is the introduction of the so-called protected undertakings. This is also being referred as a value chain cap, because the companies that would need to produce and to publish sustainability report, they need to gather information from their value chain. Now, what has been proposed and adopted by the co-legislators, because CSRD has been negotiated in December, and we are expecting it to be published in March. So the objective is to really put a value chain cap and to provide some safeguard for the companies which are not obliged to report, because they are facing a lot of requests for information in very different formats and templates, etc., regarding different aspects of ESG related data. And especially this is valid from, for example, suppliers or financial undertakings, credit institutions, etc. For some companies, especially the very small ones, this really creates a significant administrative burden, and this is why this definition of protected undertakings has been included in the directive. And this means that, for example, a credit institution would not be able to require from a company which is not in the scope of CSRD, more information that is required under the voluntary reporting standard. Another key change is that in the CSRD, it has been provided that there would be sector-specific standards. So, for example, for the financial sector or for different industries. But under this objective of simplification, this empowerment for the Commission has been removed. So now the Commission, if it wishes so, can publish some guidance, but cannot adopt sector-specific standards. For the countries in the CEE region, there was a huge issue with the adoption of this amendment of CSRD because of the so-called Wave 1 companies. So these are the companies that already for the financial 2024 have been obliged to publish a sustainability report. Of course, this is valid for the countries that have transposed, so that they have implemented the CSRD in their national legislation, like, for example, in Bulgaria, because there are some member states in which this directive has not been implemented. So what we have insisted on during the negotiations was to have an option for exemption of these Wave 1 companies, so that they would not be obliged to report for the financial years 2025 and 2026, because it is expected that the Commission would adopt a simplification of the ESRS, so the European Sustainability Reporting Standards, this year. So in our view, this would be a huge administrative burden for these companies to continue reporting under the non-simplified, so to say, ESRS. And this is why in the final text of the directive, this option for member states exists. And we hope that it would be implemented as soon as possible, for example, in Bulgaria. What other simplification efforts has the Commission pursued in the last year? Firstly, I would briefly mention the ESRS so-called quick fix, which has been published in November last year. These delegated acts provides additional flexibility in the reporting of these Wave 1 companies, and ensures that they do not need to report additional information for the financial years 2025 and 2026 compared to what they had to report for the financial year 2024. So this is because there were some phasing obligations in the ESRS, and the idea is that with the Stop the Clock directive, which also has been part of the Omnibus package, all the requirements for the Wave 2 and 3 companies have been postponed. And now we have, as we stated already, the threshold of 1,000 employees, 450 million euro turnover. This is the scope, but we still have the first wave companies which are currently already reporting. So this is why the Commission was trying to simplify, at least for what was possible to be done in a very short time frame last year. I would not spend much time on this because as I said, there is an option for member states to exempt the companies for the 2025 and 2026 not to report. This is what we already have done in Bulgaria for the year 2025. So this year we will have no sustainability report in Bulgaria. So if someone is interested in what are the simplifications and the requirements for the Wave 1 companies for the financial year 2025, you can see in the link the summary of the modifications that have been introduced with this ESRS quick fix. Another very important piece of legislation, which is directly related to sustainability reporting, is the Taxonomy the Taxonomy Disclosures Delegated Act. It has been published in January, so it has been discussed again during 2025. So the same is valid as for the ESRS quick fix. This would be applicable only for Wave 1 companies that are not exempted from reporting for 2025. So what the Commission has been working on and what has been finally also approved by the co-legislator were a few simplifications which I have listed here so that you can see the general directions of simplification in the Delegated Act. First of all, we have the opt-out for non-financial undertakings. There is this materiality threshold that has been introduced. So if they have activities which are not financially material for their business or not exceeding 10% of the KPI denominator, they could apply the option not to assess if these are taxonomy eligible and aligned. Also, the entire OPEX, or the operational expenditure KPI, can also now be excluded from reporting when it is not material to the entity business model. For financial firms, there were also simplifications. So a lot of reporting of specific KPIs could be delayed until 2028. Reporting of detailed templates can be delayed until the end of 2027 if the entity does not make any claims of taxonomy alignment in their activities. There are simplified templates and fewer data points. There were also a lot of disclosures have been removed with respect to the nuclear and gas activities and the general reduction in the number of data points required to be reported for all entities. With one delegated regulation, there have been amendments of the Taxonomy Disclosure Delegated Act, so the so-called Article 8 Delegated Act, where companies are in the scope of the CSRD, and therefore they should also report information under the taxonomy regulation. So simplification of the reporting templates. Commission states that this led to a reduction of data points by 64% for non-financial companies and 89% for financial companies. Regarding the application, there is an option for the companies that are obliged to report under the taxonomy regulation. They could apply immediately all this simplification. But as you can imagine, in some cases, there are also some software and tools that are being used, and they could need some adaptations, etc. So it is also possible to apply the existing requirements for the 2025 financial year and to defer the new requirements to be used for the reporting of financial year 2026. There are a lot of questions, and of course, Commission has tried to provide some answers, and this is why I have inserted here the link to the draft Commission notice with regards to the FAQs. And with this delegated regulation, there was an amendment not only of the Taxonomy Disclosure Delegated Act, but also to the Taxonomy Climate and Environmental Delegated Acts. These are some amendments regarding mainly to the DNSH, so the do no significant harm criteria for pollution prevention and control. I mean, just to be mentioned, this is a question mainly dealing with the usability of the taxonomy regulation. There is a lot of work going on currently also for further simplification and coherence of the technical screening criteria of the taxonomy regulation. And I think it would be more important to focus on the ESRS simplification regarding the objectives and the timeline. The main objective is a significant reduction in administrative burden while respecting the objectives of the Green Deal. This is the mandate of EFRAG that has been given by the European Commission. So the main drivers of the change, and actually EFRAG has done a lot in 2025, and in December last year they have provided the amended ESRS as technical advice to the Commission. So they claim that they have substantially reduced the number of mandatory ESRS data points with the objective to also to clarify some provisions that were currently deemed unclear by the Wave 1 companies that were already applying the ESRS. Also, there is the objective, of course, to improve consistency with other pieces of EU legislation, to provide clearer instruction on how to apply the materiality principle, to simplify the structure and the presentation of the standards. And of course, a very valid objective, which is important, especially for companies which have strong links with third party, so third country undertakings, to enhance interoperability with global sustainability reporting standards. So what is the timeline? As I said, in November last year, EFRAG submitted its advice to the Commission. So they have submitted the advice how the simplified ESRS should look like in their view. In the meantime, in December, there was the political agreement on the Omnibus 1 directive. So CSRD has been politically, at the political level has been agreed, but we are waiting for the publication in March. The Commission is planning to organize a 4-week consultation on this ESRS simplification, which should be adopted with a delegated act. And from the information that we have from the Commission, they expect this ESRS simplification to be published in official journal and to enter into force in Q4 this year. So what they envisage regarding the application is the option to use the simplified ESRS for Wave 1 companies report for the financial, for this year, for the financial 2026, even though it would be adopted in the end of the year. So this is why it's an option, because it is a bit challenging to apply something, I mean, even simplified, but something which has been recently adopted, as companies need to gather the data during the whole year. But from the other hand, we have the draft. So it is, I mean, we have this information and the clarity that for sure there would not be much amendments to what EFRAG has submitted to the Commission. And also the companies have the possibility to use the simplified, so not the possibility, apologies to, they should use the simplified ESRS for Wave 1 and for those Wave 2 companies that still remain in scope in 2028, so for the financial year 2027. And this is my favorite topic, the voluntary SME standard. In my view, it is a lot better for companies to apply something as a voluntary standard, to focus on their specificities and to be able to explain if something is not applicable to their business, than to dive into the very complex ESRS standard. Of course, there are challenges also with the voluntary standard, but first to say a few words, what is that, what we have currently. In CSRD, before CSRD simplification. So in CSRD, we didn't have the obligation for the European Commission to adopt a voluntary standard. But as SMEs are facing a lot of requests for information from financial undertakings, companies along the value chain, NGOs, clients, etc., all kind of stakeholders, EFRAG has developed a voluntary SME standard for the companies that are not in the scope in CSRD. So till now, those were the companies with less than 250 employees. So the Commission, because it has not been empowered to adopt a standard with a delegated act, has issued a recommendation in July last year, which is based on this voluntary standard developed by EFRAG. After that, we have the CSRD Omnibus, with which the European Commission has been empowered to adopt a delegated act setting this voluntary SME standard. And also we have a complete different picture, because now companies which are not in the scope of CSRD are not only really small companies and medium-sized companies still, which have under 250 employees, but we have all the companies in the range of, like, for example, 50 employees till 1,000 employees. This standard is voluntary. This is not an opt-in regime as it has been clarified by the Commission. And it must be based on the voluntary SME standard endorsed by the Commission recommendation. So the ones established by EFRAG. It must be proportionate to the characteristics of the companies. And we should apply the principle, think small first. There are two modules in the voluntary SME standards, the basic one and the comprehensive one. So the basic is, as you can imagine by its notion, it's really basic. So there are very few, I would say, data points and information about policies and procedures provided by the companies, obviously dedicated to the really small companies. And the comprehensive module, which has a lot more information. And the VSME should be in conceptual coherence with the ESRS. So the Commission has provided us again with an expected timeline. They want to do a parallel consultation of the ESRS simplification and the voluntary SME standard consultation. So again, they want to start a public consultation in mid-April to mid-May, and to adopt the delegated act setting the VSME standard in Q4 this year. So what are the key differences between the ESRS and the voluntary SME standard? So in the ESRS, we have the materiality principle, the materiality assessment. In the voluntary standard, it is not applicable. ESRS is subject to assurance. The voluntary SME standard, it is up to the company how they would wish to apply it. They can ask for assurance if they wish. They can even not publish the standard if they wish, because, for example, if some sustainability information is being requested by a credit institution or by a supplier, the SME could use the voluntary SME standard to provide this information, but it doesn't mean that it is also obliged to publish it. So it could just use it bilaterally. Sorry for that. So also, of course, it is not obliged to ask for assurance. So obviously, this would incur a lot less costs for the companies if they wish to use this standard. But we have a few challenges. So the situation, as I said, is completely different from what we had before the CSRD simplification has been proposed. This standard has been established by EFRAG for companies under 250 employees. Now, if you're a company like, so to say, large medium company, so you have more than 750 employees and a significant turnover, like, for example, 400 million euro, you're not in the scope of CSRD. And if you wish to disclose sustainability information, you can use some of the internationally recognized standards, or you can use the VSME. So there comes the difficulty on how this standard should be set in order to be both applicable for very small companies and for big companies. For the moment, the Commission does not intend to introduce different standard to, so to say, to fill this gap. So we do not expect major changes from what has been already adopted as a recommendation by the Commission. And probably we will see in a few years' time how this has been applied in practice, what are the challenges in the questions, and what is the usability of this standard, not only for the companies that are publishing information, but also for the companies that are using it. I think I have seen that there are some questions already. And as I said, I want to focus really on the VSME. I would be very glad to have some questions. Daniela? Let me see if I can read them. So regarding the net turnover, you should always check the specific terms and how they have been implemented in your national legislation. So you should wait for the publication of CSRD. Then member states would have 1 year, so 12 months for the implementation of the directive. I'm sure that all member states will do their best to implement it as soon as practically possible. And then you should check this in your national legislative act. I hope this responds to your question. And the other question is, we understand that the Commission does not intend to introduce significant changes to the VSME to reflect the larger number of companies that will be now encouraged to use the voluntary standards. How can a member state push the Commission to introduce changes that will increase comparability of information with ESRS mandatory reporting, to support greater allocation of capital in out-of-scope CSRD companies? So this is the first question. And the second one, how financial institutions can incentivize investee companies to use these standards? For example, possibly incorporate banks' questionnaires into the VSME. So these are really valid questions. First of all, regarding how to introduce changes that will increase comparability of information with ESRS. This is the challenge that I was referring to, because the issue is that this standard would be valid for a company with, let's say, 30 employees and company with 900 employees. Of course, companies which are really big in our understanding, like, for example, 900 employees, can also use the ESRS standard, even though they are not obliged to do so. If really EFRAG has done well its job to simplify it, we had, for example, last year in Bulgaria, companies that were using the ESRS, but like not fully. So there were some data points, for example, that they didn't fill. So it is always possible to use also the ESRS standard and not the VSME if for a given company it appears to be too basic. Regarding the incentives for these standards to be used, this is also what we are currently trying to do in Bulgaria too. First of all, raising the awareness, not only among companies, but also among financial institutions. They can use the VSME, because actually by introducing this safeguard in CSRD, so the definition of protected undertaking, financial institutions would not be able to require more information from companies out of scope of CSRD than the one required under the voluntary SME standard. And in my view, it would be really beneficial if they base their questionnaires on the VSME. I don't know if we have other questions. Daniela?
Not written. If anyone wants to speak directly to her, can you please raise your hand and I will give you access? No? Okay, so we should consider that those were the two questions that our audience had. We have another one. It's
Okay,
written.
let me open it. What will be the cap for information requests from large companies? This is also a very interesting question. Actually, we don't have a response from the Commission at this stage, but apparently the Commission is exploring the possibility this to be the comprehensive module, which of course is from one side logical, but from the other hand, this raises the issue about the very small companies, in my view, because I can give you an example. In the comprehensive module, there is a requirement to disclose scope 3 emissions. So this could be very costly and burdensome for a small company to make calculations about scope 3 emissions. And this is why it is also important what would be set in the final standard, as some data points are obligatory and some data points are I mean, it's a voluntary standard, but if you say that you are using it, there is an obligation to fill some of the indicators. This is at least my understanding. So it is important on how it would be framed, as if some of the information could not be disclosed by companies, and if this could be asked by stakeholders, like, for example, financial institutions. Now, there is another question. How do you think the reduction in reported non-financial information under CSRD, CSRD will impact other regulatory files, such as SFDR, and companies' ability to develop reliable financial products? So thank you very much for the question. So SFDR is currently under revision. This is why I haven't mentioned and haven't focused on it, because it would be a lot more beneficial to discuss it when it is finalized. I mean, the negotiations in the Council and Parliament are finalized. So currently we have Article 8, Article 9 products in SFDR. Now what has been proposed is to introduce 3 categories: sustainable investments, transition category, and ESG basics. We have this problem with SFDR since the beginning, that SFDR has been adopted in the first place, and there were no data provided by the investing companies. Therefore, all the asset managers were expecting CSRD in order to fill this gap. And now we have cut the scope. So again, we are in the situation there is no much information. And this is why I said that it is so important to promote the VSME, because in my view, this would be the only tool that would be used in countries like in Bulgaria, where most of the companies are SME. So otherwise, you can not get information for investing companies if they don't use this or another type of voluntary standard to disclose information.
We have another question.
We have another question, okay. Representing the user perspective, our understanding regarding the added value of the VSME is, apart from a compliance exercise, is also a reputational exercise. Is this the case also in smaller countries like Bulgaria? I would say that we are trying to convey the message that VSME is not a compliance exercise, because you are not obliged to do it. So in my view, companies should use VSME if they really wish to focus on the sustainability issues. Yes, in some cases, there could be some kind of, let's say, not compliance, but like to be done only to respond of requests for sustainability information from other stakeholders. But we have a really rising number of companies that, from a reputational perspective, wish to disclose sustainability information. And we think that also clients has become a lot more sensitive with respect to sustainability issues. And I think that this is a trend that would continue in the future.
Let's give a moment or two if there is any additional questions.
Or if someone from the colleagues that have asked the questions, if they wish to continue the discussion, of course, I'm happy to do so.
Okay, so on our behalf, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Daniela, for the invitation.
Is much appreciated, and your collaboration with us. If someone has additional questions, they can also send us a message, and we will make sure that we pass it over to you if you don't mind to give a reply.
Sure.
Thank you all. I think we kept it right on schedule. So if you want to revisit this webinar, you can do so, like I said, on our website. It's going to be published. The presentation is also going to be published. And I want to give my thanks to all of you for your time, and to Hristina, thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you, and have a good weekend too.
Goodbye.